It's one of its kinds, actually. Yeah. True.
Yeah.
So you had come over to when Swift India started? There was quite a few.
No. I've just been here for 4 years. I used to work for Western Union before that. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So Arundhati speaks very highly of you. She's the chairman of the joint venture.
Oh, okay.
And she talks very highly, and she's very passionate about what CH was able to achieve.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's nice. Good to hear.
Yeah.
YouTube live.
Yeah. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of your favorite online show, Business and Banking Dialogue, a daily online show discussing on relevant topics with subject matter experts in the world of finance and payments. My name is KK and I'm the host and moderator for today's show. Our topic today is simplifying cross-border remittances. And to discuss that with me is Mr. Kiran Shetty, CEO and Regional Head India and South Asia, SWIFT. He has over 20 years of experience in fintech and is also the national award winner for financial inclusion. That's commendable, Kiran, because I did start financial inclusion when I was in TCS. Excellent. So cross-border remittances are a crucial source of economic growth for developing nations. So why we are saying so, what is the significance? Let's look at some statistics that tells us, okay, India is the #1 country with over $83 billion of remittance in 2019. Global remittances was to the tune of $698 worth $1 billion in 2018. However, despite such high numbers, only 5% of global remittance is digital. That's a wide gap, okay? So this wide scope represents huge business opportunities to fintech companies. So just to briefly, today's cross-border payment settlement are too slow and complicated. Maybe we could hear from Kiran Shetty on that aspect. Each country has its own system and accounting to do. In one of our talk show, if you remember, Udayan Goyal had come and had given us an example of how money travels. If a dollar payment is made from UK to India, how does it travel from country to country and beneficiary located in different countries? There are many hops and a simple cross-border transaction to reach a destination. For USD, there is chips. Euro has Euro 1. Yen has FXYC and many others, in every currency, every country. The time to settle is anywhere between 3 to 5 days, which is perhaps a little long in today's world of digital economy. Additionally, the cost at every stage accumulates and becomes perhaps expensive, around $25 to $35 per transaction. We will talk about all this to Kiran. So to discuss on the different aspects of cross-border payments, let's welcome Mr. Kiran Shetty. Good afternoon, Kiran. How are you?
Hi, KK. Thank you so much for having me. Greetings of the day to all your viewers. It's my privilege to be on this show.
Thank you, Kiran. Thanks for coming. And we would love to hear from you all about cross-border payment and how does it work. So Swift, Kiran, Swift in its 40 years of operation has scaled massively to over 200 countries, and it's currently carrying over 6 billion transactions. Now, that's a massive since it was started in about 40 years ago. So quickly, before we go into our discussion, uh, can we have a quick round on who owns Swift, since it is called society. So who owns it?
So KK, we are a company that's owned by the banking community. Our owners are the banks across the globe. And the equity kind of moves between partners depending on the usage. So we are a cooperative in that essence.
Okay. So it's a cooperative between Swift as an organized with certain people and the banks, I presume.
It's a cooperative of the banks. Let me state it that way. And our agenda is defined by the banking community in what they want us to do. So we don't drive our agenda as a company on our own. There's a board that sits together with us and defines what we need to solve for as a cooperative owned by the banking community.
Okay, so is it a no profit kind of an organization?
Absolutely. We are not for, our agenda is not profit. Our agenda is digitization. And what I will also tell you is that for the reasons that we are such a critical infrastructure, you articulated that we operate in over 200 countries and territories globally, and the fact that most of the banking transaction messaging channel is Swift, our agenda is also governed by the G10 nations as an overseer, with an extended oversight from another 10 countries. So that's the oversight as well.
Oh, okay. That's nice. Good to hear that. So, so ladies and gentlemen, we know something about Swift now as an organization. So, Kiran, what's the difference between Swift and Swift GPI?
So Swift and Swift GPI are the same, right? So we have been in the correspondent banking business, like you rightly articulated, since 70s. And I proudly claim that we are probably one of the first few fintech companies in the world, because we started way back in 1970s. And when you look at the correspondent banking, you have intermediaries and multiple partners that come into play while a bank completes a transaction for its client. So in the last few years, the community requested us to come up with an innovation such that we could make the payments more efficient and more transparent. And we always had a technology that was real time, right? This underlying technology and the rails are real time. But when the transaction flowed from one bank to another, there were geographical time differences. Then there were manual processing timelines, and there were fees being deducted, and all of that happening. So we came up with a DHL kind of a tracker on top of every transaction that indicated where a payment is at any given point of time. And many banks today are giving visibility to that tracker to the bankers, to their clients as well. So GPI is nothing but global payment innovation. That's an innovation on top of a correspondent banking rail. Our rail was always real time. And it's just that by putting that tracker and making it visible to all the parties, it is creating a lot of visibility and efficiency in the system and transparency as well. So that's really what it is, KK.
Okay. So it's a subscription that banks have to take. Like if they want, they can have just a Swift, or they can have a Swift GPI, is it?
Yeah, so we are moving into a universal GPI, and that's the endeavor with which we started this. So in few years, you will see that all our services on the correspondent banking side would be GPI only. So we'll not have we'll not have an environment where a transaction is going into a black hole. So everybody will have to comply with it.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's a fantastic change, because you can actually track your payments. So that's
absolutely
that's a big change from what.
And even customers. Yeah, sorry, Kiki. And even customers will have visibility. So there are many banks that are now using this as a tool to show their customers where their transaction is, when they can expect the funds, and this actually helps the corporates to actually manage their cash far better. So that's really a big value add. And this will bring a lot of transparency and efficiency in the system.
Super. That's a great change that's there. So ladies and gentlemen, that's a difference between Swift and Swift GPI for all those who are wondering what's the difference. So let's look at another difference. What's the difference between Swift and Ripple?
So, Ripple is based on a DLT technology, distributed ledger technology, and we are a messaging channel company. We are owned by the banking community, and our agenda is driven by the bankers in what we have to achieve. Their agenda is driven by their goals, and that's the underlying difference. So I'll say two differences: underlying fact that we are a cooperative owned by the banking community. They are a company that's a startup. The second is the technology. They are based on DLT, and we are a messaging channel.
Okay. So this Swift technology proprietary or closed in nature?
Absolutely proprietary and very, very closed and secure, highly secure.
Okay, thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's the kind of, just to get you a kind of a 60-feet view of what Swift is and what are the variations of Swift out there in the market. So how we will get into the cross-border payments. We'll have a lot more things to talk about and discuss and analyze. So this is a good topic, and it's there with everybody interest, right? So please send in your questions early in the Q&A box, because later if you send, I will find it difficult to kind of, I'm expecting a lot of questions. So please send your questions in the Q&A box, or if you want to ask a question directly to Kiran, you could do that also. Kiran, I hope you don't have a problem with that.
No, absolutely not. With pleasure, KK.
Thank you. Thank you once again, and once again, welcome to the show. So my first question to you, Kiran, is what are the different formal channels of money transfer, and what are the limitations of this system?
There are many formal channels of remittances. You have banks that are traditionally the channel that have offered remittances. Then you have money transfer operators, the large ones there being MoneyGram, Western Union, RIA, and few others, right? Those are money transfer operators that partner with locations to accept cash and then push volumes into respective countries. Then there are these exchange houses. This model is big in Middle East and in some of the Southeast Asian countries. And then there are these online players, fintechs that operate out of largely US, UK, and now are expanding in some parts of Southeast Asia and other parts of the world as well. So to my mind, these are the formal channels that are available. Now, the difference between some of these are that in one channel, which is money transfer operators, they are able to pick cash without a bank account and deliver to a party on the other side without a bank account in cash, right? And that model kind of is on the downward side. Then you have banks that are pick up from bank. There are collaborations that bank does with exchange houses, where exchange houses becomes the collecting point, and banks take charge of disbursing it into the bank accounts or even disbursing cash on the other side. And the online players are bank accounts on both sides, right? They pick up money from an individual from bank account, bring in process efficiencies and put it on the other side through a bank partnership. And very few of them are exploring and have explored using locations in the past. But largely their business is digital to digital. So that's the model that they follow. The value that they create is that they create an online portal, partnerships on both sides, KYC, and very efficient processes. So I would say that those are the formal channels: banks, money transfer operators, exchange houses, and fintech online websites.
Okay, that's nice. So we ladies and gentlemen, we know what are the different types of other than Swift. There are other players also in the market who help in transfer of money, and he did talk about a few of them.
Yeah, KK, so, I think I would definitely want to differentiate between Swift and these money transfer operators, because Swift is not a money transfer operator. We are an underlying technology, and our technology can be used by a bank, can be used by a money transfer operator, and any other player. We are not a brand that is, and that's the misconception that we've had. We are not a brand that is actually doing remittances and earning a fee out of it. We are the rails that carry transaction from point A to point B, and we charge a very minuscule amount, on that transaction. We are not customer facing, and we don't have anything to do with the remittance business at a customer facing location or a point or a website. We have the underlying technology.
Okay, that's thanks for clarifying. So are we saying then that it's not only banks, it's also other companies, including fintechs, can actually subscribe to SWIFT?
Absolutely, and that's very clear. That's how we operate, and we don't fix charges. We just take our transaction level processing charges. We are like a processing company, right?
Yeah.
And on top of that, banks create their model, or exchange house creates their model of doing remittances.
Okay, that's it. So are there any such fintechs either in India or abroad who are actually using SWIFT?
There are many. Right now, they are at various stages of evolution. Some are using us purely for settling between their banks. Few are using us for transactions as well. So there are many players that are using SWIFT in all these spaces, whether it's exchange houses, whether it is banks, whether it is money transfer companies. So all of these segments use us, and their use case are different depending on each of these segments.
Okay.
And our charges are uniform. So for all our partners, we base it on the volumes that they do with us.
Okay. So let's look at the cost of a transaction. I did talk about when we opened up the debate discussion that it's a little high as per what this could be. It's a debatable thing. Some may say it's high, some may say it's okay or not okay. So, but the World Bank had said that remittance average transaction fee is close to 7.45%, or we could take it as around 8%, which is like high. And the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal is to bring it as low as 3%. From 7.45, it wants it to bring down to 3% and to eliminate remittance corridors with high cost in the next 5 years, or maybe by 2030. So can you tell, Kiran, what are the initiatives being done to achieve this goal?
Yeah, and I'm a believer in the fact that remittance costs at 7.45% or whatever that number is are very high, right? Because you need to understand this. The people that are sending these retail remittances are people that have left their home and have left their families to bring better life back to them. They live with only one dream of providing better life by actually compromising their today for their future, right? So it's a very special group, in my opinion, and not many people can do that. That said, the 7.5 number is huge, and there are these SDG, United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, where they are saying that we need to bring down the rate below 3%. And I see a lot of actions around it, to be honest with you. The first good news for us is that India is already at or below 3%, so which is good news. And this has evolved in the last decade. The prices have come down very dramatically, given the competition and given the fact that people have challenged the model and created something on top of it, and competition has pushed the price to where it is. But overall, I think there is a global dialogue. A lot of companies, money transfer operators, have signed for the SDG, Sustainable Global Development Group initiatives. There are regulatory initiatives as well. One of the most prominent ones being the US and Mexico corridor. If you look at US-Mexico, it's one of the largest remittance corridors in the world. And there, the regulators have taken initiative to control and govern the pricing model in that market. And more closer to our part of the world, you have India-Nepal as a corridor. We call it the India-Nepal remittance scheme, Indo-Nepal remittance scheme, that was initiated by the regulators. Banks like SBI, PNB have taken a lead in driving that agenda, and that has brought the price down substantially. And then you also have newer initiatives between India and Singapore, India and Bhutan that are under dialogue to drive that agenda. So I'll summarize it in 3 parts for easy reference, KK. One, there is a global alignment and sign up on these initiatives by a lot of top players in that segment. Government is playing a very active role. Closer in our part of the world, we have clearly seen initiatives in Nepal, we've seen initiatives in Singapore, we've seen initiatives in Bhutan. So, so overall, I think this is achievable, and we will have to work on processes and other aspects. We can probably cover it through the conversation to make it further a better reality than where we stand today. I still believe that 3% is high, and there's an opportunity to bring that down as well.
Yeah, thank you. But I have a query on that. We said that at least the World Bank says that it is 7.45%. So we believe that. And you said India is as low as 3% already. Okay. Now, how is that possible? Because if a remittance has to come from any part of the world, not the India-Nepal corridor, but any other part of the world, and if somebody is going to pay to our exporter in dollars, it has to go through those hops from bank to bank, Fed and everything is involved. So the charges at each of these hops will keep adding. So is it possible, is it that 3%, what you're saying, is that a realistic number?
Yeah, so I was referring to the retail remittances, where you stated that India is the largest and largest player in that space.
Yes.
And I was referring to that segment. Now, as far as the other side of the segment is concerned, which is corporate trade and other payments, and I think GPI becomes very relevant there, because that is now exposing the time lags or inefficiencies in the system by making it very transparent to all the parties, right? And I think that our GPI will play a big role in evolving that segment into the future. So all in all, I think India is well positioned when I talk about India specifically, and GPI will be a game changer in the entire trade and payment space on a cross-border theme. And I think more and more remittance companies will also start moving into that domain into the future. And keep in mind, our agenda is driven by the community, and we are not for-profit company, right? So our agenda is always designed and driven to bring all of the efficiencies into the system.
Excellent, thank you. So, remittances, and typically the cross-border, even whether it's internal or external, it's driven by perhaps by two factors. One is the communication, okay, and the other is having a kind of a digital account, right? Could be a wallet or whatever it is. So, isn't this a ripe place for telcos to come in? And now that we have Jio coming up with 5G and with such a lot of investment, do you see telcos as a threat to SWIFT?
No, so as I said, we are not into the remittance space per se, right? We are the underlying technology. So everything for us is an opportunity. Let me put it this way.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And not that we are not seeing telcos entering this space. There are big examples and probably very famous ones like M-Pesa in Kenya that went into remittances and redefined the way remittances happen in that part of the world. And now, just from being an only Kenya business, they have become a pan-Africa business, and globally as well, they are expanding. And then you have closer to home in Bangladesh, you have bKash, which has become a big phenomena in wallets, and they've also got into remittance space. And then when you look at India, you have emergence of payment bank and wallets coming in and playing a role in that space as well. So I think there is a rule. There's a room for everybody. This market is huge. There's a formal segment. There's an informal segment, and the whole game, in my opinion, is that it is a collaboration game. It is a game where you are able to use the value of that client, not just to monetize one transaction, but to give and take more from him through that journey that he gets through the remittance. So for example, if I get 10,000 rupees as Kiran Shetty in remittances, the company should not just think in the manner that, oh, my game is about taking some commission out of this 10,000. But if I collaborate with other players and say that I can add more value to this client by bringing in value adds to his life, and probably this transaction becomes at a very reasonable cost or minimal cost, and then I monetize in some other form, both of the customer and the operator win, right? And I'm talking about that for future. the future is about collaboration, and that's where we are going. And the ones that get it right will win this segment more and more. Whether it's Geo or any other, for me, everybody is equal because I'm the underlying technology and I'm available to carry transaction from any part of the world to any part of the world.
Yeah. So when I said about them being competition, they can also be creating that underlying technology, isn't it? So will that stand as a competition, because they have the telecom, they need the technology, and if suppose they develop the technology, is that a real threat?
No, so the way I look at it is that why does SWIFT exist, right?
Yeah.
And probably that answers the question. We have been created by the banking community to make sure that each bank is not setting up its own proprietary system and investing time and money behind something that can be shared, right?
Yeah.
I think that concept has really been proven in the last 40 years to be very successful. And in the future, as we pass through these COVID times and as we get to more stronger future, the companies will be focused on more of acquisition and value addition rather than creating all of this. Just think about this. If Reliance has to go or Jio has to go and set up, in your example, in 200 countries and infrastructure, how long will they take? And what is the kind of cost dynamic they will end up paying? So for me, I see it from that lens, and that's why companies have created a company like us to support them in infrastructure that could be shared.
Yes,
right.
Thank you.
Or I can relate it to an electricity example. Not everybody would want to create an electricity thing for their home, right? They will share that one facility that can share it with multiple people and make it more viable. So that's what I'm referring to. I don't know if that makes. I've been able to relate to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you said is right. Anyway, you're looking for collaborations in future, and that fact that your scale is so high, I think that's definitely a entry barrier out there, because nobody can scale like the way you're scaled so far.
Yeah, but our ethos as a company, we don't look at it as an entry barrier, right? Because we don't define our agenda, right?
Okay.
If my owners, which is the banking community, comes tomorrow and says, "Hey, Swift, I don't need you, and we'll create something else," I'll have to shut my shop tomorrow. So our ethos says that we have to solve for their problems time and again, which they keep defining us, to make them competitive and help them serve their client better.
True.
And that is what has managed to help us survive for 4 decades. And I think that's the same philosophy that will help us go for a longer period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure about it. And Swift brings in a lot of trust. So there is that trust factor with the banks. So definitely not. I just wanted to probe you on because of the new fintechs and telecoms coming in.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll go into a question on regulation and identification. But before that, let me just remind my participants, ladies and gentlemen, please put your questions as early as possible, so that I can bring it across to Kiran quickly. Don't wait for the last minute. I generally find the last minute, a lot of questions comes and I'm just unable to take it because we value our guest time. And he is like Kiran has said, 1 hour. So we've got to stick to that 1 hour because he's got other things to do. So thank you. I look forward to your questions. So what are the challenges around regulation and identification issues that threaten the growth in digital remittance?
So when you look at a cross-border business, right, there are few challenges, and I think those are the ones that will help us accelerate the growth. So I will not put these challenges as something that is limiting the growth, but I think we need to continuously have dialogue around how these could be refined, solved for better and better and better. So number one is the fact that in any international transaction, there are multiple intermediaries. So let me take an example, right? So for example, if you have an online channel that is wanting to do remittances, it has partner bank on one side, it has partner bank on the other side, and there is a fee that they need to pay there. There's a fee that they need to pay here. So that's one part of the challenge, right? How can you make it more efficient? The second part of the challenge is that in the day and age where we live today, KYC and cyber are real issues, right?
Yes.
And how do you make sure that you are able to keep the bad guys out of your system is a very important and relevant question, and the cost of doing business increases around these aspects. And then the third thing I would think is, how can you move your let's take an example of KYC. How can you move them to more and more digital mode, where once you have recognized a customer, you have a certain validity through which you don't do any further check, and your systems are able to drive those alerts. So for me, I think the biggest challenge for regulator, and that's the role of a regulator, is to make sure that you're safe, your money is safe, and wrong people are not using your channel, will evolve around these pieces, and how they can work with the operators and banks and other participants to review that process and make it more and more efficient, such that you have lesser intermediaries in a payment channel, such that you are able to do one KYC and have a tenure for it rather than doing it in every transaction that comes through, such that you are able to, and India is a great example with Aadhaar, such that you can leverage more of those digital assets into this segment. I think if we can facilitate all of those aspects and move the entire paradigm on a continuous improvement process. And let me tell you, this is not an easy problem to solve, because this has been going on for a long period of time.
Sure.
It's an ongoing process of review, recognition, evolution as we progress. But one thing I'll tell you, KK, is that I'm very confident that post-COVID, and even as we transition through this COVID times, the businesses are going to get far more sharper in challenging every process and every other aspect of their business. And that will also create some kind of a friction within the system to evolve this model. And I think the biggest thing I'll close with is that probably regulators will have to be more open to evaluate it in its merits and support the industry while they evolve through these pieces. That will actually help us drive the goal of bringing down 3% across the globe in terms of charges and others, in my view.
Great. Yeah, that's very informative, Kiran. Kiran, we also talked about that we have these two modes of questioning. One is, of course, besides me, the participants can ask question directly, also can ask a question directly to you besides the chat box. So we have a very experienced banker, the name of Harish. He would want to ask you a question directly. Harish, please unmute yourself and ask a question.
Hi, Harish.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, Kiran. SWIFT being the de facto messaging platform between global banks, right now, and especially in India, I think since '95, for processing primarily payment and trade, have decided now to take on the global card players, Visa and MasterCard. And I believe there was an announcement to that effect in April, May, by enabling instant and frictionless account-to-account payments. So primarily, I mean, can you elaborate on that? Because I did not get the essence of it. That's my first.
Yeah. So Harish, why don't you complete your questions and then I'll try and answer.
It is about, I believe that the whole messaging platform standard is now moving from ISO 8583 to 20022 and somewhere. So if you can explain what's fundamentally changes in that, in the new formats and all.
Yeah, and Harish, thank you so much for your question. And I appreciate the fact that you're very well tuned into what we do. Let me tell you that our constant endeavor, like I've been saying in the earlier part of conversation with KK, is to see how we can support the community, and our agenda is defined by the community. So we've got a mandate from community to make our cost of processing more and more efficient through our journey. So if you look at the SWIFT system today, we carry, let's say, Harish, you are sending money to your brother in Kenya through Bank of America, right? So they define a certain charge for that transaction, and the underlying rail is always SWIFT, right? And they pay us a fixed fee for every transaction. So let's say a transaction to Kenya hops from Bank of America, Mumbai to Bank of America, New York, and then Bank of America forwards the transaction to a bank in Kenya, which then finally lands it to your brother's bank account, which has a counterparty relationship there. Now, what was happening in the earlier scheme of things was that at every hub, the transaction was KYC checked and then processed to the next leg. and every leg would only come into action when the transaction would reach that particular hub. So for example, if I initiated a transaction, when it lands to New York, only then will they start processing anything on that transaction. And when New York pushed it to Kenya, then they would do something on the transaction. So now in the new strategy that we have evolved in direction from the board, we are going to publish the transaction real time. So let's say that a transaction in Bank of America is initiated now. It will be visible to all the parties that are part of that chain defined by your contract. And only one KYC will happen for that transaction, such that nobody is able, we are not replicating the cost of KYC on each and every party. So we are taking out that inefficiency out of the system. And then the last part on that strategy, Harish, is that we are bringing in new technology and making it technology agnostic. So we are allowing it to be accessed by API, ISO 20022 standards, or in the future with any other currency, virtual or anything else, or DLT as well. So that's the direction that we've announced. We are not necessarily competing with anybody. It is actually reimagining the cross-border and bringing in efficiencies in that system. And that could be applied to payments and everything else. So that's where we are going. And if you go back to what I articulated, a lot of other people that were coming in and adding value to that segment will probably be able to still do that, because we'll open it on the edges for them to add value and collaborate with the banking community. So that's where we are going, Harish. I don't know if I've answered your question, but we are not competing necessarily. We are trying to make it more efficient and robust for the correspondent banking world, and making it more relevant to today's day and age in direction from our owners and our constituents.
I think, I mean, my 2 cents is that if you do that, I mean, I think you're increasing the efficiency of the banking system phenomenally.
Yes, absolutely, Harish. I'm glad you say that, because, and I think you have a great grasp. That's exactly what we are trying to do, because at the end of the day, we survive because of the banking community, right? Yeah. Or any other customer that uses us. And for us, it's very important. And since profit is not our agenda, it's very important that we keep providing tools for you guys as a banking community to make it better and sharper.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for your question, Harish.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Harish. I think very well explained, Kiran. the future of SWIFT with this, it's like a distributed ledger that once a transaction initiated, at least all the legs are getting perhaps initiated at the same time, so that they don't wait for a transaction to come, but they can take action well before. Great. I think it should be a game changer for SWIFT, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's look at some of the fintechs who have many have entered space. I'm sure there's lots waiting in the wings to come in. So how are these fintechs leveraging technology to reimagine remittance? If they are doing to just do exactly what you are doing, I think there's no play for them. Are they doing something really different than what SWIFT and others are doing, the new players?
Yeah, so KK, I personally believe that the technology has not been an issue. That's my personal belief, because if you look at the remittance industry, between money transfer operators, between exchange houses, or banks and others, technology has not been an issue. It's the application of technology and investment in technology that is the issue, in my opinion. And then the other part that we spoke about is the process efficiencies, right? Which are, how can you reduce the number of hops? And like Harish asked us just now, the new SWIFT transaction management platform will significantly add value in the future to this, because we are slating to launch that sometime in 2022 end and get fully on with it. I think the most important piece is that how do you sharpen your processes and create more and more value for the client? That will become more important. And I'll tell you that this will become more relevant in today's day and age, when we are battling with COVID on one side, the banking community, the MTOs, and all of them are going through a brutal bloodbath, right? Because they are struggling to sustain the business. So you will not have a situation for at least a reasonable period of time to make new investments. You'll have to continuously see how you evolve, improve, work with regulators to reduce the friction, in all of the items that we discussed, whether it's KYC, whether it's number of hops, whether it is about your settlement processes or anything else. So I think the piece around new technology will become a very, very difficult conversation in the short term, or innovation. I think we'll have to look at more of process evolution, more of technology leveraging in places where it's manual and stuff like that. Like, for example, when you look at our GPI, it was a completely manual process where nobody knew what was happening under the surface. And you put a tracker on top of it, suddenly becomes more visible, right? So in my opinion, it is leveraging those aspects in technology space that will make a transaction far more efficient. And that's the drive where I believe companies should be focused on. And that's value immensely there, because we are looking at bringing the cost down substantially.
Yeah, true. While you say that technology is not the issue, the kind of had the distributed ledger kind of technology been adopted, because it's nothing new now. I think they would have got a much better technology under play, and that's exactly what you're trying to do. Maybe a pseudo blockchain you're trying to do in future, but that's exactly that the transaction is open, is distributed at the same time, and everybody else comes to know that there is some transaction that is coming up. That could have been perhaps a game changer had you worked on this technology a little earlier.
Yeah, no, so KK, I hear you, and I'm a great fan of blockchain personally. But what I recognize, and I want you to kind of tell me if you believe in this or not, is that when you're talking about scaling it at a global level and correspondent banking or cross-border business is at a global scale, right? It's not about one corridor or others. There are about 20,000 corridors that operate. And when you're talking about taking the technology leap, you're talking about investment being made at that level. And when you look at data, there are enough and more blockchain POCs that have happened on this. But when it comes to scaling, it's the investment that kind of brings it back. And my point is that given that we are working through some of the most difficult and challenging times in the human history, the appetite to do that in the short term would be low. But companies will have to make their processes more efficient in these times as well, to make sure that the clients that are going through pain are still able to use services at a better, efficient way. Companies are still able to make money in this entire transaction space. And I was more referring to this answer in today's day and context, that you have to probably look at sharpening your saw rather than reimagining the entire thing, which may not happen in the next 24 months. Does that make sense to you, KK?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt about it, that's the way to go. And see, whatever happens, I think SWIFT remains the most trusted, and banks are all using it. So why would I want to take a risk with my money? Okay.
No, there is a theme that we have in our company. We call ourselves responsible innovation. So you will see that when it comes to SWIFT, we only go behind a technology when it is proven, because what happens is that people trust us. And if I go and say that, like, for example, we are talking about a new transaction platform, and we are saying that we want to launch it in 2022, by 2022, we'll have a huge investment going behind that strategy, right, from each of our constituents or our partners in aligning with it. Now, if we don't get it right, and if we've not tested it enough, we've not checked it enough, and we've not done it enough, it takes a direct beating on my reputation, and also on the fact that we are a company that's owned by my users as well, right? So for all of those reasons, we always say that we have to be responsible in our innovation, and we'll take a leap when we believe that this has got robust future, and if our customers invest in it today, their money is not going to go down in drain.
Yes. Thank you, Kiran. Kiran, like I said, there are also questions that come directly. So I have a YouTuber asking you a question. As you know, we are live currently. Right now, we are live. Besides the EPS Zoom channel, we are also live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and also LinkedIn. So we could get queries from anywhere, and there are a lot of people who are listening to you from these social media channels. So the YouTuber question is, Swift network, and I'm sure you must be prepared with this. This was bound to come. Swift network is highly secured, closed loop network, but operators were affected in the last 2 years with frauds. Bangladesh, as well as Nirav Modi PNB. What way Swift is building endpoint security?
Yeah, no, so this is a question that, and I don't know who's asked that question, KK. Do you have the name?
No, I don't have the name because
okay,
it's
no
coming
problem.
from YouTube.
No, no problem. So let me address this perspective. And I think we as a company need to communicate better. Let me illustrate this to you with an example.
Okay.
Right. I will say that I'm an aeroplane that carries passengers from every part of the world. Right. I can land. I'm a Boeing, and I can land in every airport in the world. Now, the passengers that an airport puts into my plane is defined by the security check and balance in that particular country or that particular airport. Yes. Let us take an example of 9/11, right?
Yeah.
It was a Boeing that was flying. Passengers were screened, and you had, unfortunately, wrong people that came into that flight, and they hit the World Trade Center by using all the legitimate pilot directions and all of that. The plane is designed to fly. It will go in the direction that you pointed to, right?
Yes.
So in this example, will you blame the plane, or will you look at the problem from a different lens? And my view is that you have to look at the problem in that lens, because we are the carrier of an information. If somebody feeds in information into my system with all the right credentials, with all the right accesses, and it also is supervised by another person in a maker-checker world, how would you say that Swift is at fault? Now, we don't communicate as well because a lot of parties that deal in this transaction are also our clients, right? But that is the real issue. Now, are we leaving it to our clients? We are saying that the world has changed in terms of cyber fraud. You have instances of money being ripped out of your ATM card, online, and all of those. and we say that we are a community organization, so we have a role, and we have two roles there. One, we need to make everybody aware of the new age cyber risk. Given that we operate in 200 countries, we are able to see much more of that than anybody else. Second is that, can we do anything more, in our system, like bells and whistles and stuff that could help us tag or flag the emanating risk that's coming to the system. One example being, let's say PNB, in this case, you spoke about Punjab National Bank or Central Bank of Bangladesh, sends us transactions only between 9 and 5 p.m. Suddenly on a Sunday, I see a transaction. We say that we will be able to now help banks, alert them that how come this transaction is come on a Sunday. Not in the earlier scenario, it was not our role. So all that I'm saying is that, while there were all when we looked at the transaction that went through our system, they all came in a legitimate manner, the way they should have come, right? We do not control the environment of the airport or the bank on what they do, or the client what they do, right? That has to become a responsibility of that particular environment. But we still believe that we can add value to our consumers, and we've started to work on various initiatives around that to make our system more and more robust from a bell and whistle perspective, and that's an ongoing process for us. We have come up with a customer security program where we have mandated a certain number of principles that each organization needs to follow before connecting with Swift, and we have independent audits that are being conducted on that. We report such institutions that are not complying with it to the regulator. And that can only happen with organization like us, because I keep saying this, our profit is not our motive. So we are very, very open to disclosing such gaps to regulators and stuff. So yeah, so that's what I'd say to this question that came from one of your listeners from YouTube.
Yep, I think very well explained, Kiran. And you're right about this, the example that you gave about an airplane. And you can't be held responsible for that, so that's understood. And I think banks also, it's mandated by the RBI also that they must have a fraud risk management system in place. So if there are transactions coming on a Sunday, obviously there is a problem. This should have trapped it. So well said. And I think that was just a question. It was bound to come, and you have explained it very, very well.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, KK, to your point on RBI. I think RBI has done a lot of good work in terms of evolving the entire landscape in India. But I think the cyber risk is a game where you have to stay ahead of the risk every day. Yes. And it's a dynamic world. It's not something where I fix it today and I say, oh wow, I've done it and I'm all safe. It's a dynamic world, and we need to evolve with time and keep a very high alert on it as we go more and more digital.
Absolutely, there's no doubt about it. Okay, so we move on, Kiran. So let's look at the the changes that are happening with the entry of fintechs and telcos. Two very important companies or industries that are coming in, fintechs and telcos. So please, could you tell our audience what kind of business models would evolve in future?
And this is my opinion, KK.
Yeah, sure.
I believe that when you look at telcos, and let's take an example of India, they are looking for making sure that they have more stickiness with their clients, right? And they will probably leverage this opportunity to get a client that has a wallet in hand and that he can spend on other initiatives and make that stickiness journey more and more meaningful. So if a telco gets that piece right, they can, one, bring down the cost, which goes back to the overall goal that we spoke about initially. They can change the user experience, and the customer will benefit, one in terms of price, the other in terms of more value benefits that will come through the journey. And that money will stay with the wallet that can be used in various ways, including, and some of the wallets are also giving interest and stuff. So I think that's where the journey will evolve. For me, it's all about value benefit that you can provide to your client. And telcos are clearly struggling with stickiness. And I think if they are able to see this from that lens and not clearly look at it just like a monetizing transaction, they can change the game. And they can significantly add value to the agenda of bringing down the price. But having said that, I think they also have this journey of learning in managing a financial transaction, because financial transactions have inherent risk. And I think regulators will have to be extremely cautious in making sure that these entities are able to live to the standards that are required to manage this business. So I think it's on one side the wallets using this as an opportunity for stickiness, and on the other side, regulators accepting them and making sure that same level of standards are maintained by these guys that are required by other operators. I think that's where this world will evolve, in my opinion.
Okay, cool. So we had this question on the fraud, and so there was this another question that is coming your way is on a similar fraud, which was reported by a cooperative bank, which was compromised to the tune of 80 crores or so in a B2B remittance. So was the bank's SWIFT system compromised in the case of a B2B remittances?
So, I can't talk through any specific case, and since you've not spoken about the name, I can't talk through any specific cases without the detail. But I can talk about the modus operandi that we have seen. Okay, and the modus operandi is that normally we see that if you don't have firewalls in your system and there are limited checks and balances around your environment, you have hackers that seep in a spam through an email or something where you click attachment and then you let access to your systems. And these kind of malwares read your system for extended period of time. They read systems for 3 months, 5 months, 6 months. In that journey, they capture the behavior, they capture through the clicks, they capture the user ID, passwords, and all of that, right? And then on an extended weekend, they initiate a transaction. So like, for example, if Monday happens to be a public holiday, they will initiate a transaction on Friday. and try to take money out. This has happened with card networks. This has happened with multiple other networks, and that's the common modus operandi. And I think that's the challenge that everybody is dealing with. And for those reasons, I think our program, like customer security program, become very important. And every operator should adhere to certain hygiene when they are handling money, and that becomes a critical requirement. In the past, when transaction was not as much digital, probably it was okay not to invest. But I think RBI stepped in, mandated, they have to have a CISO, communities need to have CISO and all of that aspect. So things have definitely evolved from there.
Okay. Thank you. So today's global financial system is extremely fragmented, as you know, right? We have so many entities out there. Hence, assets cannot be quickly and freely transferred between markets, countries, and various settlement. And there is also this time lag, having cross-border payments, etc. How can we solve these cumbersome time and cost penalties?
This is a reality and complication in a cross-border business. And I will tell you that there are no easy answers. But like we have discussed in the past, it's about looking at processes and improving them in collaboration with regulators. I can give you our example. When you look at SWIFT GPI, we have introduced a pre-validation segment where the entire transaction is validated upfront before it passes through our rails. So like, for example, if somebody is sending money from US into India, we already validate whether that account number is correct, whether that person is compliant, and from a KYC check and balance perspective, only then we release the transaction so that it doesn't go through the chain and come back, right? Mm-hmm. So I think those kind of examples, KK, will really help in the journey, and it's a collective responsibility of all the operators, and with right representation to the regulators and support from them, I think we can solve for that. But there's no easy answer. It's a journey, and it'll all continue to bring better user experience, more competitiveness in this entire industry.
Right. Thank Kiran. Kiran, you have a what can I say? A big gentleman wanting to ask you an audio question. That's none other than AP Hota, ex-NPCI head. He's impressed with your talk, and he would like to ask you a question directly to you.
Yeah, I call him the father of retail payments. So,
right.
I have great respect and regard for him. He's the one who's redefined the Indian landscape in the world to the fact that we are number one in the world. So I think it's his legacy. Absolutely. So it's my privilege to answer any question from him.
No, I didn't have any question. I just turned on something, and really possibly it went on that way. But having got the opportunity, Kiran, congratulations. I suppose you explained extremely well. I also share the idea that GPI and the domestic payment integration would be a great thing, because in India, all payment systems, retail payment systems have a positive confirmation system, and all real-time systems have. Possibly you can share with everybody whether how you see that happening, the domestic payment systems integration and GPI. This is what at the spur of the moment it comes to me.
Yes.
Because you can really respond.
Yeah, no, and Hota Saab, it's always a privilege to have you as part of this conversation. And thank you so much for that question. I think it's very relevant, and that's a great point you bring in with your experience. So the thing that I will tell you, KK, is, and Hota Saab, is that when you look at India is a leader, and thanks to Mr. Hota, in real-time payments, right? World over, yes. When it comes to real-time, India is spoken about. What do we do with geographies that are real-time and connect the cross-border into that, right? So we are now looking at connecting our GPI to the domestic NPCI network through banking network, such that we can have the retail payment flow real time seamlessly. Of course, there are these KYC checks and balances that we'll have to work on. But our endeavor is that within this year, we want to get that piece up and running. And if that happens, India could become the first country to move in that paradigm to complement the fact that retail has moved at that space. We are already in talks with a couple of banks, so I'm very confident that we'll have something going there.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Hota. Thank you, Kiran. That was very well. So Kiran, we talked about competition from fintech, competition from telcos, but there is one real competition that is really coming your way, and that is digital currency. How would this change the dynamics of cross-border remittances?
Again, KK, for lack of other word, I probably want to repeat this again. We are an underlying technology, right? And or a rail. So we can adapt to anything. Like when Harish asked this question around our new transaction management platform, I had also articulated to you that will be ready to handle any currency as well. So from our perspective, we are agnostic. We can do any of those aspects. But on a side note, I will tell you that like I was speaking about blockchain and its adaptability, digital currency, if one is done in one country, another one does another one, all of the rules that are required for transactions that happen today will be required for that world as well, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So I think one, I definitely feel that a lot of things have changed in the last 3 months. That will probably change the innovation approach for a considerable period of future. So let's see how that evolves. But right now, like I spoke about DLT, I think virtual currency will also stay in that bucket for me, at least for foreseeable future. And let's see how that evolves.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. So we are almost to the end of the session. We actually passed by a minute or so. So my final question to you, Kiran, is that in cross-border remittances in future looks to be very commoditized and will cost nothing to the customers, which is a delight to the customers. What's your view?
And absolutely, KK, I would agree with you 100%. And for me, I'll tell you, I base my decision or view on the data that I see locally. When you look at what Mr. Hota and PCI has been able to do, look at the transaction cost that we had when money was moving from point A to point B in India, right? With UPI, with IMPS, everything has suddenly become zero and payments have become commoditized. And now people that are into that business are looking at value benefit and deriving other value chain, right? I think the cross-border will also follow that journey. The timing is very difficult for anybody to predict, but I think it's going in that direction, in my opinion, KK. I would completely agree with you.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of today's discussion with Kiran Shetty. I think we covered a whole lot of things in this cross-border payment, various topics, and some of the questions were excellent questions that came from participants. We talked about how SWIFT works and the organization and what it means to the entire community who are involved in remittances, and how SWIFT is more a technology, underlying technology player than trying to compete with others. There are of course emerging new technologies, emerging new players, telco as well as the fintechs, and the threat of the digital currency. We have to see how that pans. But that's interesting times as we move along, and to see how the whole things pans out in the future. Kiran, thank you very much for coming. It was 1 hour of wonderful information, very analytical, very incisive. And I'm sure all the participants in today's program would have taken a lot out from what you spoke about. Thank you very much, Kiran.
KK, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the audience for their patience and all the questions. I really enjoyed this session, and thank you to Sheshadri and Vivek as well for having me on this one. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.